Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. Want my section because I make more money? Go ahead, I will still make more than you. This all happened about 18 years ago. I was a waitress for a village inn. I worked the morning shift because it had the most business. Now this is back when smoking was still allowed in restaurants and we had a smoking section and a non-smoking section. Our seating chart was designed for this in mind and never changed even after the restaurant went full non-smoking. Now on Sunday we had your wonderful church rush that would pack the entire place for hours. So Sunday was totally non-smoking until 3 p.m. On the weekends we would have about 8 servers. This meant that smoking side had 2 while the other side had 6. So if you worked the smoking side you had 10 tables to take care of while the other servers had 4. Management knew I was good at what I did and would always put me in the biggest section on Sunday and I could take care of all 10 of the tables no problem. Now servers always talk about their tips and without fail I always made more than anyone else. This caused anger from some of the newer servers and they said it was because I always got the better section. Management came to me and told me what was going on. That's when we decided on malicious compliance. Okay, you can have my section next Sunday, I will take this small section. But since I am on the other side of the restaurant, I will not be able to help you much. I then got to enjoy a less stressful Sunday, did my job like normal, turned my tables, and made a ton of money. The other server was running around like crazy and not getting much done. At the end of the shift they learned that they made less than the week before because of how bad they were taking care of their tables, and the church crowd are horrible if you aren't taking care of them right. It was always great to hear the server say you can have your section back, I don't want it ever again. Now this was not a one-time thing, this happened many times over the 5 years I worked there. Every time it happened I still made more money. Every time we would get a new server complain I just smiled and said, go ahead, take my section, I could use a break. Next story. Dead dog wasn't an acceptable excuse to miss work. So when I was entry level a long time ago, my boss made me come in the day after I discovered my dog dead in my room from choking on something it grabbed and swallowed on my desk. There were obvious signs she panicked before she passed away. Tried to call in a sick day because I had a combo of grief and guilt, but employer wasn't having it. I was only a few weeks into the job so didn't have any sick days, was technically on contract in my probationary phase, and I was fresh off of unemployment and needed this job. Came in visibly sad. Tried to ask to go home one more time. Boss didn't care and told me to man up, it's just a dog, so I was like F it and just let my feelings take over. I was openly crying and sobbing at my desk while working on my project and answering emails. This is one of those modern open floor plan offices/design studios with no walls and tiny partitions instead of cubicles, and everyone can see and hear me. I'm literally wiping tears off my face and desk as I work. This is also early 2000s where the term toxic masculinity wasn't coined, so seeing a grown man openly sobbing at his desk like this really threw people off. When asked by coworkers and people passing by what happened, I told everyone what happened to my dog and that I didn't even have a chance to take care of her body. So she was lying in my bed dead, wrapped in my blanket until I could get home and figure out her cremation/burial stuff. When they asked why I was even at work, I very loudly stated that my manager didn't think it was an acceptable excuse to miss work. Needless to say, she looked like a monster and I was told by her boss I'd have 2 days paid to mourn and take care of my dog and I shouldn't have had to come in. Next story. No personal mobile phones at work. I am 33 years old, male, work in IT cybersecurity, and my work has been on a big multi-factor authentication, the SMS codes from your phone or authenticator apps type thing, pushed to better secure our systems. As a result, basically every system or software requires a phone to access. Like many other places, my work does not supply phones to its workers unless they are sufficiently far up the leadership chain. Friday, my boss sends one of those directives that manglement bosses always do, to try and be commanding. He tells me that personal device use at work is not permitted, and specifically cites mobile phones as an example. Cue malicious compliance. To comply with the directive, I uninstall all the MFA code applications on my phone that are needed by work, and submit tickets for getting the desktop versions. IT fulfillment's response? What desktop version? Boss is backpedaling, but it wouldn't matter at this point, as the tokens for the MFA apps are gone. For extra irony, boss rushes approvals for software installs, but gets stuck in the new software approval process he created. End result? I spend Friday browsing the internet while he runs around rushing software approvals for the MFA desktop apps we need. Next story. Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come to front for any reason, so I did. I'm a 20-year-old male that works at a very popular restaurant in a very snobby area. My main job is to assist the servers in any way I can so they only have to worry about sweet-talking the customers. I do all the heavy lifting for them, whether it's cleaning their tables or taking their drinks and food to their tables. I'm doing it, and all they have to focus on is making the customers laugh. They get tips that range from $17 to $40 per table while I make $8 an hour and get treated poorly. Enough backstory. Cue the malicious compliance. My manager came up to me in "I'm better than you" mood and told me to deep clean the floors, ice makers, walls, trash cans, and racks, and to not come to the front for any reason. I'm very annoyed at this because none of those things are my job duties. We have a staff that deals with all the cleaning of the back. So it didn't make any sense to have me do it. These tasks would have taken me an hour and a half max, but I was feeling a bit cheeky and decided to really deep clean the back until it was spotless. About 30 minutes later, the same manager comes up to me and tells me that there are 4 tables that need cleaning and 2 other tables just got sat and I need to bring their drinks to them. I looked at this man with the stare of a 20-year-old that has no bills to pay and I say, "No, I'm not done cleaning." He looked shocked and responded angrily, "You can finish later, they need help." And I countered with, "No, it's filthy here. We don't want a health inspector to just walk into this filth, do we?" He storms off like a toddler that didn't get their candy. 2 hours go by and I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing as if I was working for Chef Gordon Ramsay himself. The same manager comes back again with a smirk and says, "Wow, this looks like it's going to take you all day long. Maybe you should come to the front and help the servers since there's a huge Sunday rush." I replied with, "You might just be right," and I go back to cleaning. He storms off again. Fast forward to 2 minutes before my shift ends. My knees, legs, and fingers are all aching from cleaning. I shuffle my way to the front where my manager has been waiting for me and he says, "You finally decided to come help, huh?" And I look at him without saying anything and clocked out, and then I tell him, "Sorry, I'm not clocked in." I walked out to my car while he was blowing my phone up. I didn't care. I had 5 days off back to back and he can't fire me since I did as he told me to. The moral of the story is, don't think you are better than someone that has nothing to lose. For all the people that have been commenting that he can fire you, yeah, you are right, he could. But he won't do that because I'm the only one that is working the position, and no one has applied to come work at the place for $8 per hour. There are more details to the story than what I told, so instead of trying to be smart, just ask, "Why do you say that?" instead of assuming I'm just some entitled kid who thinks they run the world. Thank you for reading. Next story. You have to use your vacation days. Disclaimer: English is not my first language. For context, this takes place in the Netherlands, which has a very different working culture and legislation than the US. Recently I got a message from HR that I still had a lot of holiday hours open, many of which would lapse as of July 1st, as a matter of law. I was aware of this, but in the past I was always able to sell them for money. In the COVID years I've hardly been away for mostly obvious reasons, and I'm getting 32 days per annum. In other words, my vacation days had piled up and my current balance was a grand total of 390 hours, and that's excluding the new 32 days from 2023. So, that's almost 10 weeks of holidays. Of these, I had to finish roughly 200 hours, or 5 weeks, before July 1st. Possible, of course, but hardly ideal. Not for my employer, our customer, or for myself. Which is why I thought it wouldn't be a problem to sell these hours for extra salary, as I had done before. But I was quite wrong. HR told me to contact my manager, who denied my request. I explained to him exactly how many days I had still open. He'd asked the CEO, but the CEO sent me a message about how they care about work-life balance and mental health, etc. For the record, I fully agree with this stance in principle, and frankly, I think the measly amount of holidays people in the US get is shameful. And the culture in which it's sort of not done to actually take your holidays, I find outright toxic. I'm glad I'm working in a country and for an employer where this situation is much better. But on the other hand, one has to be practical. COVID was inflicted upon us all, and you can't compensate for a lack of holidays taken in the past with taking copious amounts of holidays now or in the near future. I love to travel and to socialize, But we couldn't go anywhere or do much, and I didn't see the point in taking holidays just to sit home more. In fact, my work provided me with some much-needed structure during the lockdown times. And working from home meant that work was actually much more stress-free than it was in the office. So anyway, I brought up my situation and my reasoning, but it was still denied. I was just told it's good to take off some days, and to go on holiday, and so on. Again, I'm not opposed to this at all, but the scale of the problem seemed to have just escaped the manager and the CEO. I had and have already planned on traveling for 2 weeks, to Sicily and Greece if anyone's interested, maybe also mainland Italy again, but after that I'd still have 3 weeks which I'd need to finish. I also have a long weekend planned to Iceland, but that only takes several paid holidays because of the weekend in the middle. It is then that I decided to start complying maliciously. Instead of trying to argue the point again with my CEO, I planned a meeting with my line manager and the account manager of the customer I am working for. I told them I needed to take every Friday off basically until July or my days would lapse. I didn't ask for permission because whilst paying out holidays is voluntarily, they need a very good excuse to deny leave requests, such as denying requests for key figures last minute when you're in the middle of a big project with deadlines etc., but my request wasn't one of those, and obviously they're not allowed to deny a payout and my leave request anyway. It'd be super hypocritical too. So as a good and diligent employee, I wanted to make sure that our customer was aware of my sustained de facto reduction in capacity and wanted to discuss how we could best bring up this potentially touchy subject with them. After all, this structural reduction of capacity is different from a normal 2-week vacation or just some days off here and there, which is a pretty normal situation here, even for contractors. Since they're a key account and I'm working for them as a senior DevOps/cloud engineer, I had anticipated to have a slightly awkward meeting with my manager and the account manager discussing the details, after which I already half expected they'd U-turn at some point and decide to pay out my vacation days after all. But they exceeded expectations because when I entered the meeting, not a word was spoken about my 2 denied requests for converting my holidays, or about the framing I had given this meeting about how and who wanted the honor of telling the big customer they'd be losing 20% of my capacity, and my employer would get to charge 20% less. Instead, the account manager just asked for how many days I still had open, which we were easily able to see in the system. He then proposed to just pay out all my open holidays from 2022 and before, so 10 weeks instead of the requested 5, so the backlog would be cleared and this situation wouldn't occur again. Happy days, I have already received 2.5 months extra in salary and I still have all my 32 days from this year, so I have more than enough days for my holidays and for general R&R, so my work-life balance is really not in danger. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.